A man and a woman are out on a first date, and they start talking about movies. While they are eating, the woman Maria mentions how much she loves Quentin Tarantino. The man Joe plays it cool until she mentions the music of Ennio Morricone, which sets Joe off onto a rant about Tarantino being a hack sicko, which makes Maria violent. She throws water on Joe and puts a hex on him. Joe walks home while calling his friends about what just happened. That night, Joe can't sleep. He doesn't believe in hexes, but he just doesn't feel right. The next day, desperate, he calls a fortune teller on the phone and asks how to remove the hex while sitting with his friends, mocking him. The medium on the phone says some very strange things about feet, all the while Joe's friends turn on the TV and Tarantino is giving an interview on one of the channels. Joe throws his phone through the TV. Now with the broken TV, Joe goes over to Maria to ask her to lift the hex. But she just laughs and berates him once again. Joe spends another sleepless night in bed and begins to have a crazy idea. The words from the medium start to appear on the walls, and Joe has a vision from Sergio Leone. Leone tells him to sacrifice Tarantino in order to bring him back. Joe wakes up from a drunken stupor on the floor and finds an old DVD copy of A Fistful of Dollars stuck to his chest. Joe calls his friends and tell him about his vision. They let him know he should seek medical help. Out of pure instinct, Joe goes to the hardware store in his robe. He gets plastic, duct tape, and a hammer. Joe then drives the streets of Beverly Hills in his purple PT Cruiser, just looking for Tarantino out in the open. Joe also sees in a newspaper that he has opened a small theater, so he drives to the theater and camps in his car. That night, a homeless man tries to break into his car, but Joe, on day 6 of being unable to sleep, hits the man in the head with a hammer and causes him to run away. The next morning, Joe, still covered in blood, sees his chance. Quentin is going inside his theater. Moving like a wild bear, Joe runs after him, tackles him, and takes him over his shoulder and dumps him in the back of his PT Cruiser. Quentin comes to a few minutes later and tries to escape, but the two have a wild conversation that ends with Joe smashing Quentin in the head. That night, Joe, in an abandoned lot in South Central, wraps Quentin's body in plastic and lights him on fire with gasoline. He dances around the body like a madman, and after a couple hours, falls dead asleep next to the fire pit. In the morning, Joe wakes up in the dirt, horrified. He looks around to see if anyone has seen him, and for the first time in days, he goes home. Joe sees reports on the news about Quentin being missing and hundreds of messages from his friends, but he ignores them all and buys a plane ticket for Rome. Having ditched his PT Cruiser, Joe makes his way to the airport after showering with only a small Ziploc baggie of ashes in his pocket. Before the LAPD realized that it was Joe that abducted Quentin, he's able to make his flight to Rome. In Rome, Joe doesn't speak Italian, but after several missteps does make it to the grave of Ennio Morricone. Joe throws the ashes he collected on his grave, and they catch the wind and light on fire in the air. At the edge of the cemetery, Joe sees Sergio Leone riding a bull. Sergio motions for him to come closer and then throws him on the back of the bull. The two ride off into the sunset as the scenery around them changes to a spaghetti western.